Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a podcast where we share music with each other in the virtual virtual lunch table. I do words good. Share albums with each other one at a time, like a little book club for music. We share and we compare and we talk about what we think. I'm Petey Rave, your resident shithead. And your man with no plan. Here with me, of course, is my team, my squad, my crew. We've got Patrick.
Hello.
We've got Drew.
Squad.
And we've got Brett.
Rocks roll better than powder.
Also, I realized that if people are listening to audio, they probably find it weird why I call myself a shithead. But, you know.
Oh, I mean... Whatever.
Visual gags on an audio
would
show.
They?
Yeah.
Hey,
or they just
we sometimes get three
they-
people view the YouTube.
Yeah. Or it'd be like,
Those
oh,
would be-
yeah, at least he's admitting it to himself. Yeah. We're talking about music. That's what our discussion. That's what we do. The person providing an album for us to discuss this week is Patrick.
My couch, my album.
Yes. What do you got for us this week?
We return to Minnesota's favorite sons, Hüsker Dü, album Candy Apple Gray.
Yeah. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
The Hüsker Dü is one of those bands where, like, a bunch of the bands I listened to that came about in the 90s had Hüsker Dü as, like, a big influence, but I never dove super into it. Something that really, like, something I know I've heard in passing, but never really dove into. Something that I know I needed more of, but I wasn't sure what I was getting into besides, hey, there's a bunch of the alt-rock bands from the 90s that really dug this band. So I was like, okay. Let's go.
Brett, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I mean, Hüsker Dü is a known quantity here at the Record Breakers, and anybody who was around watching MTV for a little while had a chance to see some Hüsker Dü. But this, I knew this was the transition period of Hüsker Dü. But aside from that, it's really not my thing. I like the stuff that, I was into punk rock, and I was into alternative grunge era and past. It's that wishy-washy in between area that Hüsker Dü lives in this album specifically. And I was like, well, what are we getting into? And I was up for it. I'm Mr. Bob and the other one, Grant, the two boys. I'm aware of those guys.
Yeah.
I've seen their T-shirts on musicians before.
Yeah. Yeah. Patrick, how would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes and elements?
This is their second to last record. The last record was kind of a mess of double album not doing it correctly like they had before. But this is like Brett said, it is where, we listen to Zen Arcade, which is still really, really heavily kind of a punk record and super noisy and super fast. This is them becoming a much poppier band, a much more. It's them getting, growing up, even though, this is 5 years into their career or something, because they only lasted a minute. But this is everything, to some extent, the band already hates each other and everything set up for them to fall apart is there. Literally the album goes back and forth between Bob Mould songs and Grant Hart songs because they just couldn't ever agree on anything other than they played music together. There's a tension to it. There's and you see the seeds of Bob Mould's later work, but then you also I feel like you hit Grant at the peak of being Grant Hart and doing his thing before the band fell apart. it is one of those. It's a really interesting like space and time for the band, but also like a kind of great album because it is like also them like maturing and finding another sound, a band that had been known for constantly evolving from like their first record is a live recording. It is 17 songs in 24 minutes. Like it's called Land Speed Record because they loved amphetamines. And this is like this is them, slowing down and picking up acoustic guitars sometimes.
Yeah, Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
You're telling me people who wrote a song called Crystal may like him for weird. Okay. But besides that, the thing about this album is that at times it is super raw and super energetic, right? It has that punk rock pure heart to it throughout the entirety of it. And it's a lot of noise, right? There is some songs, which we'll get into, aforementioned maybe, that sort of hit a lot of noise in the backdrop to a point, which is cool. But then there are parts of this album which are way, way quieter than like my mind sort of got into. So because of that, because of the breath you hear in this sort of album from them, you hear a lot of that 90s like alt rock college scene that like people picked up on and sort of dug into on this, right? You hear without this band, in my opinion, like you don't like the Smashing Pumpkins are not as prevalent, right? You don't hear those sorts of things. But this album does have a lot of catchy hooks to it. There is musicianship to be had. The weird thing about this is that it doesn't make it. God dang it! I just read the chat. I looked down and saw the chat, and I hate you. The thing about this album is, yes, there's a lot of great musicianship and a lot of great composition, but it's something that some albums, some bands will make it pretty for you and make it easy and like point it out to you. That's not this record. You have to go hunting for it at spots, and that can be fun in and of itself, especially with this very like obviously alt rock like punk type album. But it's something that is in your face at times, mellowed at times, but super unapologetic about what it actually is and just sort of goes for it, which is cool.
Brett, what would be the theme elements that catch your attention? How would you describe this album musically?
I mean, it's transition era, alternative rock. So, excuse me. The tone did too much speed there from this A&W speed.
Speaking of, not even once. Yeah. A&W, not even once.
That's right. It barks all the way because it's good. So the tone, the sound of the instrumentation is, yes, it's good, as the video could see on Drew. But it's like the tone is punk rock tone. Like you can hear this. The tone sounds very familiar if you've listened to any like late '80s punk rock. It's very but the sound is the lyrics are. The sound is pre-grunge alternative in the lyrics and the tonality, but the tone of the music is punk rock. It's sort of like this mashed together. But you've got two directions you're going because every song is either a Bob or a Grant song. There's not a whole lot. Look at the writing credits on these songs. You can see there's a big split. And also while you're listening to it, you can be like, okay, that's the one where they're screaming, or that's the one where there's an organ. It's a little strange how that dynamic was going on. It's kind of emo at times. I would if you haven't listened to it already, know that going in. It's still a Patrick album. Don't be fooled. But this was also their first major label release. So like when I listened to this, I wanted to see, not just because I kind of knew what I was getting into because I've heard some of this stuff before. Like this album charted. I wanted to see what they did with the money. Like where was the money going when they recorded this? And where did that budget go? And when I go into the songs, I will sort of point some of that stuff out because there are things that are in this album that wouldn't have been in their earlier albums. They did things differently. It's kind of like musicians grow as they get older and do things differently.
Yeah.
But it's there's a lot going on here, and if you didn't know, you wouldn't really. There's a lot of stuff you can miss.
Yeah, you could. That is definitely the case. But let's zero in on some of those things. Patrick, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
So I said at the top, like, this is my obsession with Bob Mould coming back, but this album made me realize just how much I love Grant Hart songs. So I'll start with Don't Want to Know If You Are Lonely. Maybe the best Grant Hart song of all the Grant Hart songs. The thing that made Hüsker Dü in part was Grant Hart using vocal melodies in a way in punk rock that no one else in the early and mid 80s really was in punk. Like the dude like grew up loving, 60s and 70s pop music and then joined a punk band. So you get this really, really like melodic vocal over, Bob Mould's really pretty sparkly guitars that, were very much of their era and probably wouldn't sound good now, but sounded awesome then. And like that song is such what Hüsker Dü, what made them great was like their songs always had emotion, always had feelings in them. Like Brett said, there's a lot, I think a lot of thematically like emo is definitely like Hüsker Dü opened that door in a lot of ways. Although stylistically it doesn't really fit with what came later, but they were a band that talked about their feelings in a way punk bands did not in, 1986. I don't know for sure. Another just, Bob Mould being Bob Mould. Sounds very, very much like one of his solos, like records from 20 years later. Like you can see the roots of what Bob Mould's solo stuff came to. Sorry Somehow, another great Grant Hart song. Punk rock needs more organs. All rock needs more organs. Can we just make organs everywhere? Make organs in music again?
Hey, watch it. Explicit tag.
Yes. Organs are cool.
We've had enough organs in pop culture from 2017. Let's chill out a little bit.
Let's not have everybody flaunting their organs all willy-nilly.
Yes.
Whipping their organs out.
But again, like Grant's vocal melodies really, really are the standout. And then there's a couple of these like softer songs like Too Far Down where like someone gave Bob Mould an acoustic guitar. And, for a guy who played, Ibanez Flying V's through distortion pedals, like for him to tone that back. And again, like growing up and trying something else and trying to be more melodic, you get something totally different. And I think where like earlier Hüsker Dü records are like, they're, a barreling freight train and they're just constantly high energy stuff. This has like some ups and downs on it where it, it'll slow down and soften up for a minute and then, kick back with something a lot heavier and faster.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, Crystal. The vocals sort of hit you on Crystal in a way that sort of gets you ready, in my opinion. Again, the just noise that sometimes comes up is, I think, very well exemplified here. The guitars are sort of just there. The bass rides a note for most part, and then plucks up and down a little bit to let you know it's still there. But a lot of it's writing and a lot of it's just to like sort of slap you over the face, right? I don't know for sure. This to me is the one that hit me over the head with the this is what like all those bands that were like we like Hüsker Dü is a big influence. This sort of okay, I get it. You got a droning vocal, you got a vaguely punk drum part, you got some strummy
vaguely
guitar.
Punk drum.
Yeah.
That is very
Like,
descriptive.
Just
Well,
one
it's-
single tom.
Yeah.
It's
He's gonna hit
it's
that
a-
shit. Kinda.
It's vaguely punk because it's like the punk thing, but it's not the do-got that you hear from like most punk. So it's
Yeah.
not like the straight up punk drum part that you think of when you think of punk drum. But it's got everything. It's all there for what they were looking at. And then like I'm gonna double dip on the next one because in the middle of the record there's two quiet, pretty songs, Too Far Down and Hardly Getting Over It. That just sort of, hey, let's do some quiet, pretty stuff. And it's just like right smack dab in the middle of the record, and that's kind of cool.
Brett. What would be some of the key tracks for you?
Stand in the place where you are. Crystal. This album opens up with a good taste of what you're going to get for about half of the album. It's a solid 3-piece rock song, sound of the era. The reverb is on the reverb's on the vocals, like the reverb's in your face with the vocals, and you hear it in the drums and in the guitar solo. Like it has a sound like you're in a punk club, like it's being recorded. It has that feeling of like you're in a shitty basement bar. And it worked. Like I'm sure that was kind of what they're going for. But that's what like, if you listen to like what was the No Control by Bad Religion had that sound to it as well. Like it sounds like it's in a club, but it's not really, and it's kind of has to do with the way that the reverb slaps back. And I felt like it worked. Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely. This is the song that I've heard this song a million times. I think I saw it on MTV when I was a little kid. I heard people play it at the music store that I worked at, and I didn't remember what the song was they played until I heard it now in this listen to. It's poppy and earwormy. It has the guitar tone of the era. This was the one that like it sounds like the guitar is loud but really far away. Like somebody has a microphone that's way far away from a super cranked amp. It has a very distant sound to it in the mix. But you can tell they put work into it. On a side note, that song was released on an EP, and like on that EP, they did a cover of Helter Skelter, worth looking up. And Sorry Somehow. Like I like how they used a rotating. Like let's talk. Come on, we're adults here. Let's talk about organs. The use of a rotating speaker, it added to the track. It's not the catchiest song in the album, and the hook wasn't. It was kind of a weak hook, and it was extremely emo-y. But I like the bold choices. I like bold choices. As I stand here and I tell you,
Stand and deliver.
Yeah, I'm starting to hear the Weird Al song "Spam" in my head, and I'm trying to come up with the correct lyrics to "stand" instead of "spam." But you could again, like I said, this is my go-to thing. But this is an album where every single song you could dig through and be like, okay, what was going on when they wrote this? What kind of drugs are they talking about? What kind of horrible thing happened to them that caused them to write this? There's a lot going on in this album, and you can see how like this could have influenced the people that came like 5 years after, or even like 3 years after. So those were pretty substantial songs, and it was fun for me to listen to those three more than the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah, and Yeah, those songs. You can definitely hear how it influenced other people and the planting of the seeds of those sounds. It was like,
Yeah.
of the early
Dirty.
90s.
Stop talking about all this porny shit.
Yeah. But yeah, let's bring it back around the horn to talk about some conclusions on the Hüsker Dü. Hüsker Dü! Drew. What is your conclusion on Hüsker Dü?
Hüsker Dü.
And you can too.
What's weird about this record is you wouldn't want to go into it just looking. To me, this isn't like a background record. This isn't something that I'm going to put on and just jam out to. It's something that you go into like looking to think about, in my opinion, which is weird from a punk band, from a band that is punk or punk adjacent. You don't go into it usually thinking like, I'm going to dive into the music of this record. I'm going to sit here and like think a little bit, like, which is weird. Like usually if you're thinking on a punk record, it's because they're yelling about politics. It's not because like they're doing neat stuff musically. So this is
that's very dismissive of how much fun you can have with fuck the kids.
But at the same time, I think it's something that it's cool. It's cool that this type of album like is there, and it's something that if you listen to yourself a lot of college radio in the 90s, maybe check this out if you haven't yet, because there's a lot of crossover on this. So,
as someone who lives near a college, you have those radios.
Someone who lives very near a pretty well-known college. Maybe not for the college rock radio reasons, but more of the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young reasons. But
yeah.
There's some intermingling there.
You should do a Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young record.
Do. Oh, sorry. They make you wait for it.
Yeah,
listening to Styx today. Side note.
Oh God,
nice.
that's a rabbit hole we're not going down. Not until you bring the album.
Not open that Pandora's box. Brett, what would be your conclusion on Hüsker Dü?
It's Hüsker Dü. Like
Hüsker Dü.
Yeah, it's something that everybody should have some knowledge of, just because it's like it's a rung in the ladder that got us to so many other things, and it came from so much. It was like it almost seems like the band that was the younger cousin of punk rock, and then it grew up, and then it like somehow became better in some ways than its older cousin, and influenced people that were the older cousin's kids. It's a very in-betweener kind of band to me. It's kind of wishy-washy and loosey-goosey, and it's a more emo than I kind of get into, for as hard and screamy as things are. But that's me. Other people may be into stuff and things. This is definitely an important stuff and or thing. I don't think it's the most important. I think, Zen Arcade is probably where I would go first. But if you want to have more, if you've had that and you want to have a dessert steak, this is the dessert steak. But know what you're getting into. Don't expect this to be, Led Zeppelin 2. I mean, it's okay. But it's probably not gonna you're not gonna shit your pants and be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But if you do, please email it. I want to hear your shit in your pants story and how Hüsker Dü is to blame.
If you do shit your pants for listening to this record, it will be unrelated. That's what we're trying to say.
Well, I mean, if it isn't, I want to know.
Yes. That we're still trying to find that brown note.
If Hüsker Dü's had the secret brown note weapon that you just had to have the right Sansui receiver to get it, let me know.
Yeah, this is a nice. Album is an important transition to things going forward. Well, this sound is an important transition to things going forward. But I think, and it's fun and it's enjoyable. I think in my heart, I would rather just go forward to things going forward. That it influenced. Like they took it. It's like, all right, they made the thing that was the better thing. But it's really cool as a study, which is what we're here to do. We're here to study.
Yeah, high-minded music
homework.
Reviews.
Yes, because we're professionals. We're professional music reviewers.
My paycheck's still in the
Wait, are
mail
you getting
somewhere.
paid for
I was going to say, when did we become pro at this? I'm not getting paid.
Oh, you're not
I'd
getting
like-
paid? Am I the one that's been collecting checks for all four of us?
I'd like some money. Like, money's cool. Like, yo.
We're sponsored by Element. I don't know.
And A&W root beer.
Yes.
It's not as good as Barks.
Their official slogan right there. But yeah. Last word on this, Patrick. What would be your conclusion on this album?
I'm gonna give you different homework than this record, although you should listen to it. There was a really, really good NPR podcast series a couple of months ago called "Do You Remember?" about it's like a 5-part series about Hüsker Dü, complete with like interviews with everyone in the band. It was made right before Grant Hart died last year, and it's really, really good. And if you got some hours in your life to kill, it is worth listening to because you hear so much of about that music scene that they were a part of, like them and the Replacements, and the fact that they were like an SST band, but they were like the weird artsy band on SST, and then all the bands on SST were suddenly artsy bands.
Yeah,
like
that
it
happened.
and it's really good. That was what got me to listen to more of this album, because I'm very much of the opinion that like Zen Arcade and New Day Rising are the height of Hüsker Dü, but like the later stuff, especially Grant Hart developing as a songwriter, is also really good. And I don't know, I don't know why, I don't remember the day I got obsessed with Hüsker Dü, but it's been many years of my life now, and I will continue to be obsessed with them.
Yeah, Hüsker Dü. Oh wait, no,
They have like 4 more albums.
but
Hüsker should be done.
And I still don't think we've done a Sugar record, so that might have to happen.
We'll see.
Booger sugar.
Meshuggah?
No,
Booger
Sugar.
Sugar Cult.
I'll bring a Booger sugar record next.
You
I
are
was
bringing the
mostly
Booger
foreshadowing.
Sugar record.
Foreshadowing.
Yes.
Foreshadowing.
I don't believe this is the record in which there are snow-covered hills, but
Yeah. Dr. Roxo's not skiing on his razor blade skis.
no. But yeah, let's get to our haikus. We sum it all up in poetic form. I'd have to say I got a peek over at Patrick's notes, and it made me feel inadequate with my little sheet of like hastily written like piece of paper, and he's got like several lines and paragraphs and things like that. I was like,
I have a system.
yeah.
It's been developed over Jesus Christ
200 episodes,
Yeah, let's not think about
200. Never thought
including
we'd
the
get here.
lost one.
that. Yes. I'd have to look at the actual numbering, but yeah. Yeah, let's do haikus. Drew, what is your haiku?
The inspiration to all of your nostalgia, worth at least a spin.
Mm-hmm. Brett, what is your haiku?
Aggressive sounding with a bit of the emo. Still Hüsker Dü.
Yeah. My haiku. Strummy moody rock. It's a bit forgettable, but enjoyable. But yeah, Patrick, what is your haiku?
Creative tension, but the magic was still there. Then it fell apart.
Then it fell apart. That is it. Those are haikus. Those are our thoughts on Hüsker Dü. We are officially Hüsker Done, at least for that album. You can, of course, find it all on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers, the home game. Follow along at home. Do the things. Do your homework. Do your due diligence. On next week's record, next week's episode, we're going to talk about another record, and it's going to be provided by Brett. Brett, what do you got for us next week?
Another great post-punk sort of in-between album. We're going to listen to Fleetwood Mac's album Rumors.
Yes.
Boy, howdy! It's gonna be. We're eating our vitamins. We're going back. We're doing stuff that I don't think the target audience that we present albums to have heard any of.
Yeah, my bitch love do cocaine.
That album was fueled off of hatred for other members of the band. There was a divorce going on. People weren't talking to each other, but they were all there to sing music and blow lines.
Yes, exactly.
And he's not talking about not saying the correct lines into a microphone, kids.
No, Stevie Nicks, look at them nostrils.
Damn. Yep.
She's been clean for a long time.
But not this Stevie Nicks.
No,
Not
but
that
this Stevie
Stevie.
Nicks.
She's 5'1" and full of white powder.
Yes. So we look forward to that discussion next week. But that is next week, and this is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. Patrick is at The Swagger. Brett is at HibbityBibbard, HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew is at X2X. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Rebelli.net for this and other shows. Subscribe, like, share, do all the things. Find us all over the place. We're going to be more places. I'm actually going to start putting us in more places. It's going to be my project for this year. Decentralize. Project Decentralize. So look forward to that. We're going to be where you want us. Everywhere. But that's it. Until next time. Hasta los huevos.
Hüsker Doodaloo.